The doo-wop sound of the 40s and 50s was honed by American teenagers on street corners trying to one-up each other to become the greatest group in town. This friendly rivalry, also seen in Chinese cafes as electronics engineers try to produce increasingly optimized circuits, is also seen in the German car industry. If Audi's navigation system uses real-time traffic information, BMW's system has to have it yesterday. It was in this highly competitive environment that Mercedes tried to one-up its German rivals with the revolutionary Mercedes A-Class. A false floor raised the seating height, producing the interior space of a Mercedes C-Class in something shorter than a Ford car. No one had done anything like this before, and the A-Class was in a class of its own. So why did Mercedes abandon this revolutionary design, going back to the same tried and tested shape? This is the Mercedes A-Class story. Mercedes-Benz, one of the oldest car companies, was known around the world as a purveyor of large luxury cars. The van and truck business was almost as old, but Mercedes had largely ignored the mass car market with its tight profit margins, leaving that to others to fight it out. A year before the 190e was launched though, in 1980, Mercedes showed off their vision of what a Mercedes compact car might look like with the 190e Compact. With the size of Mercedes engines, most of the car was reserved for the engine bay, leaving precious little for the occupants. If I was going to grade it, I'd give it a C for effort. With the public interest for small city cars though, the following year Mercedes designers showed off the NAFA or Nahverkehrsfahrzeug, which roughly translates to short distance vehicle, and not, as you might imagine, Noddy's Mercedes. The car used a tiny 3-cylinder 1-litre engine with an automatic gearbox. The turning circle was just 5.7 metres thanks to 4-wheel steering. The car fell woefully short of Mercedes crash ratings though, and this design remained just a pipe dream. Mercedes went back to what it did best, large luxury cars. But there was pressure from management to expand their market. Rival Volkswagen was already cleaning up in the mass market, and they could reduce costs by sharing chassis and engines between their mainstream and premium cars. BMW's abortive attempt at the mass market by purchasing Rover would lead to the Mini and a renewed effort to push their 3 Series into the mass market, followed by the 1 Series in 2004. Over time, Mercedes felt that they could suffer the same fate as Rolls-Royce, a niche luxury car maker with an ever-decreasing market. Rising European traffic density was forcing drivers into smaller and smaller cars. California was passing clean air legislation that would make it harder to sell big luxury cars with large engines. Mercedes customers were older people. A smaller mass-market car would open up a whole new, younger customer segment. It could be a second car, or maybe a car for the kids. Maybe younger customers would buy this car, then trade up to a larger Mercedes when they had a bit more money. The 190e Compact was clearly not the right way to go, and Mercedes wanted a compact car that was a step change, something to leapfrog the competition. This was a time many car companies were creating MPVs or multi-purpose vehicles designed to make small cars more practical. Mercedes engineers designed a new form of chassis with a raised floor that gave excellent interior space in a compact package. In concert with this, they created a custom-shaped engine that would fit low down at the front, using the space under that raised floor. This allowed the engine to slide below the safety cell in the event of a frontal collision, giving the tiny car excellent safety. With the California clean air legislation requiring car makers to sell a certain percentage of zero-emission vehicles, Mercedes developed an electric version with the batteries neatly stored in the space underneath the car, giving it excellent weight distribution. This really was a revolution in packaging. The first inkling the world got of this new vehicle was late in 1993 when Mercedes showed off the Vision A93 concept at the International Motor Show in Frankfurt. Three different power plants were shown: 1.2 litre 3-cylinder petrol and diesel engines allied to a CVT transmission, plus a 40 kilowatt electric motor and batteries that would give a 90-mile range with a favourable wind. The rear seats and passenger seat could be removed, turning this compact car into a vast cargo carrier. Although it was pitched as a concept, work had actually started a year earlier on turning this design into a production vehicle. This shows the confidence Mercedes had in it and how quickly they wanted to expand their lineup. Their confidence was backed up by a positive reaction from the public and press to the Vision A93 prototype, and the new car was fast-tracked for production. The progress could be seen a year later when Mercedes showed off the FCC, or Family Car China concept, in Beijing. China was opening up to Western investment and was expected to be a rapidly growing economy. Mercedes presented their vision of a motorised future to the Chinese government, and the FCC was a big part of it. The prototype would also be offered as a pickup or a panel van to satisfy all sectors of the Chinese economy. The car had clearly been developed since the Vision A93 and was closer to what the final production car might look like. Smart had been working since the early 1980s on their own small car. They'd realised they needed an existing car manufacturer to help develop it, and so partnered with Volkswagen. But a change in management at Volkswagen in 1993 left Smart scrambling for a new partner that they found in Mercedes. Although the general direction of both projects was pretty set at this point, both companies would work together on the finer points to ensure both cars were a success. As Mercedes continued to develop their car, it became clear the 3-cylinder engine, while thrifty, wasn't powerful enough, so it was expanded to a 4-cylinder, and it would be available as both a 1.4 and a 1.6 litre petrol engine. The engine itself would be mounted at a 59-degree angle, sandwiched between the driver's feet and the floor. Being so low had the side effect of better weight distribution. With the engine being such a unique shape, the new engine was tailor-made to fit and couldn't be used in any other car. While it might seem difficult to service, it could still be easily accessed from above or from underneath when on a ramp. Work also continued on the electric version, expected to be launched around the same time. The CVT gearbox from the Vision A93 prototype was dropped in favour of a standard automatic, along with a 5-speed manual. Mercedes also perfected an automated manual gearbox which did away with a clutch pedal. To change gears, the driver would take their foot off the accelerator and the car would engage the clutch when the driver changed gears. Weight was something Mercedes paid particular attention to. Where the original concept's body was made of aluminium, the new chassis and body would be made from aluminium, steel, magnesium and plastic. The attention to weight meant the new car, now called the Mercedes A-Class, would be a full 80 kilograms lighter than the Audi A3 that would launch in 1996. That's the weight of a fully grown adult. But this weight savings didn't come at the expense of safety. Mercedes-Benz knew their reputation was on the line, and their new car needed to be as safe as possible. Heaven forbid that they would launch it and a motoring journalist would find the car was unsafe, possibly even days after their glitzy launch. Front and side airbags came as standard, along with seatbelt tensioners, and side protection was beefed up with specific chassis elements. Body parts were designed to be easily replaceable in an accident. The front bumpers were made from plastic that was designed to return to their original shape after a low-speed impact. This not only lowered repair costs for the owner, but insurance rates as well. In the new environmental era, Mercedes was keen to point out that many of the body parts were easy to recycle. They also took a fresh and novel approach to the interior. With the A-Class expected to appeal to a younger audience, the dashboard came in a variety of colours and styles, a departure from the increasingly dour black that was becoming the norm. The removable seats that were such a feature of the concept car were carried through, giving this little car amazing cargo space. Even the sunroof was innovative, giving 2/3 more opening than standard designs. The Mercedes A-Class was launched at the Geneva Motor Show in March 1997, with Mercedes themselves claiming it to be the most astonishing car since the Mini. They also claim their diminutive car had essentially the same interior space as a C-Class, despite being almost a metre shorter. The public was impressed when the car launched on October the 18th. Mercedes were evolving from their stuffy luxury car past. They'd released the Vito minivan and the svelte SLK just a year earlier, and the M-Class SUV. The A-Class was a radical new design that seemed to be just what customers wanted. Mercedes had one-up rivals Audi with a car that seemed to offer more in a more compact package than the new A3. Mercedes were also innovating with alternate fuels. The EV version had turned into the Zebra, or Zero Emission Battery Research Activities prototype, with a 125-mile range. This would prove to be a dead end, but they would persist with fuel cell technology. NECAR, which stood for New Electric Car, or No Emission Car, or maybe it alluded to the Neckar River near Mercedes headquarters, who knows, would first appear as a truck demonstrator in 1994. By 1997, it had been shrunk down to fit into the A-Class. Mercedes would continue to refine the technology with the NECAR 4 in 1999, the NECAR 5 in 2000, culminating in the F-Cell in 2002. But with a range of just 93 miles, Mercedes were never able to productize it. MPVs were becoming the latest automotive craze, led by the Renault Megane Scenic. The A-Class, with its foldable, removable seats, seemed to provide the same MPV flexibility in a more compact package. It was over half a metre shorter than the Renault. And that high driving position gave confidence in a car that could feel light and flimsy compared to larger vehicles. But although the interior was practical, the quality didn't feel good. The plastics were just a bit too plasticky, especially for a car wearing a Mercedes badge on the front. But just a few days after the car launched, the news wasn't talking about the interior being too plasticky. They were talking about a test a Swedish automobile publication had done on the new car. In Sweden, it's common to do an accident avoidance maneuver called the ELK test. So called because it simulates having to avoid an elk that's standing in the middle of a fast country road. The car swerves to avoid it, then swerves again to return to the correct side of the road. The only trouble was, the A-Class that Mercedes had worked so hard to make as safe as possible, failed the test in a big way. With publicity lined up to sell Mercedes' new high-volume car, this was the worst possible news to hear, especially as a few days earlier Mercedes had been touting their car as the safest in its class. But to Mercedes' credit, they were fast to react. Production stopped completely for over 3 months while Mercedes replicated the problem and came up with a solution. In the process, they spent a reputed £123 million, and that doesn't include the loss of revenue for the car or the damage to Mercedes' credibility. The track on the wheels was widened, the suspension stiffened, and all cars came with Electronic Stability Program, or ESP, as standard. Although ESP was designed to help prevent skidding in the rain, it also helped with drifting, which made this very rare accident avoidance maneuver safe. Production began again. Mercedes continued its launch advertising, along with lots of information on why their new car was really, absolutely, truly, definitely safe this time. Taking this issue seriously and working hard to fix it worked. In the first real year the A-Class was available, it beat the Audi A3 in sales, at least according to German figures, and would for the next 8 years. It became the fastest selling Mercedes in history. Mercedes continued to expand the range in 1999 with a 1.7 litre turbo diesel and a 1.9 litre petrol engine. Production expanded to Thailand to supply Asia and Brazil, where the A-Class was sold throughout Latin America. They'd experiment with a hybrid prototype dubbed the Hyper. A more memorable experiment was the A38 AMG. Mercedes' tame performance tuners were let off their leash to make just 4 wild cars, 2 of which were presented to Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard for their dominating performance in the 1998 Formula One World Championship. The 1.9-litre engine up front was augmented with another at the back. This made the car all-wheel drive and slightly insane, with 60 appearing in 5.7 seconds. The 5-speed gearbox synchronised both engines together, presumably with the power of magic. Audi would launch the upright A2 that was both longer than the A-Class and had less interior space, but despite this, contemporary car reviews, while praising the A-Class, would compare it not with premium cars like Audi, but with its cheaper sibling, the Volkswagen Golf, which used the same platform as the A3. Not bad competition to be compared to, but it didn't help Mercedes' desire to move the car upmarket into a new luxury category all of its own. And despite Mercedes aiming at a younger market, the A-Class was popular with seniors who loved the high seating position and good all-round visibility. The A-Class got its first update in 2001. There were minor modifications made to the outside, but more updates inside, where the cheap interior was made a little bit more premium. The bigger change was the addition of a long wheelbase version. The extra 17 centimeters was given over entirely to rear passenger legroom, and special longer rear doors helped them get in and out. The interior length of just over 2 meters was the same as the top-of-the-range Mercedes S-Class. The A-Class got another mad AMG version in 2001 as the A32K, somehow managing to fit a 3.2-litre V6 engine into the A-Class's tiny engine bay. They initially tried to fit a 500 horsepower V8, but surprisingly it wouldn't fit. But the V6 370 horsepower engine gave it more than enough power, with a 0-60 time of only 5 seconds. In 2002, a 2.1-litre engine appeared on regular, non-fire breathing cars, and Mercedes released a new variant, the Vaneo 7-seat MPV. Surprisingly for Mercedes, quality issues haunted the car, and it ended production after only 3 years. By the time the second generation A-Class appeared in 2004, Mercedes had sold an impressive 1 million cars. The new car didn't change much outside, the lights were revised as well as the wraparound glass at the back, but there was a brand new 3-door version. Safety was further improved with active head restraints and optional rear side airbags. The new car's biggest fan was Christina Aguilera, who liked it so much she released a single specially to promote it. I'm sure her enthusiasm was genuine, although the wads of cash to promote it might have helped. The A-Class had always maximised space for the occupants to the detriment of boot space, which lagged the competition. The new version addressed this by adding 23 centimeters to the car's length, giving 15% more boot capacity. The engine was improved, with the 1.4 becoming a 1.5, the 1.6 becoming a 1.7, the 1.9 now a 2-litre, and the diesel 1.7 also becoming a 2-litre. The old 2.1-litre engine became a 2-litre turbo. These engine changes meant more power, lower emissions, as well as better fuel economy, aided by a new 6-speed manual gearbox. A CVT automatic replaced the standard automatic gearbox, something first proposed on the Vision A93 prototype over a decade earlier. The interior got a smart dashboard update with optional sat-nav, but the various colour options gave way to the same black design seen on other cars. Of more importance, at least to Mercedes, was the introduction of the larger, more traditionally shaped B-Class the following year. It used a variation of the A-Class's chassis, and it would reuse those specially designed engines. Apart from a couple of A-Class special editions, sales ticked along nicely until 2008, when a mid-cycle refresh appeared, with minor additions like the option of active start-stop technology and active park assist. But although Christina Aguilera might have been excited about the car, the public's interest was waning. Sales were okay. 1 million second-generation cars were sold by 2012, but the new shape hadn't been the runaway hit Mercedes were hoping for. And most shameful of all, at least to Mercedes, it was being outsold in its home market, not only by the Audi A3, but by BMW's new 1 Series. The Mark III A-Class in 2012 would abandon the raised floor design entirely, going back to the tried and tested shape that the public seemed to prefer. The car grew again to retain interior space. It was now 69 centimeters longer than the original car. While many car makers were moving away from regular passenger cars to higher crossovers, Mercedes seemed to be going in the opposite direction. But it was all to do with economics. The Audi A3 and BMW 1 Series were outselling the A-Class, so clearly this was the shape customers craved. Renault were willing to jointly fund chassis and engine development for something that could take on both of these cars. The result was already being used on the revised B-Class. Renault would produce the Infiniti Q30 and QX30, and Mercedes would use it for the larger CLA and crossover GLA, and of course the new A-Class. The upright shape from the previous generation car had been bought by older customers. It wasn't a hit with Mercedes' target demographic, 20 to 30-year-olds. The new style, while giving less space and practicality, was something young people preferred, and to a for-profit company, that's all that mattered. 1.6 and 2-litre turbo petrol engines were available, along with 3 different diesels that were becoming increasingly popular. The default manual gearbox was now a 6-speed, and the CVT automatic was swapped out for a dual clutch automatic, giving manual fanboys an almost immediate gear change at a click of a paddle, while allowing them to rest their aching clutch foot in stop-go traffic. Coupled with a slippery shape, the new car got excellent fuel economy. Inside, the car got many of the new technology features that trickled down from Mercedes' more expensive cars. Trim levels continued upmarket, making the original A-Class look decidedly cheap in comparison. No one was comparing it any longer to the Volkswagen Golf. The AMG all-wheel drive model developed 355 horsepower, making it a potent hot hatch with a 0-60 time of just 4.3 seconds. This gave the A-Class some much needed street cred, while frugal versions could get nearly 80 miles per gallon. The chassis might have been a backward step, but the new car was beautifully executed. It would be manufactured in Germany and Hungary, but sales were so good, production started up in Finland a year later. The A-Class was being exported and sold to more countries around the world. A small facelift followed in 2015, with small refinements such as LED lights instead of halogen and the option of adaptive adjustable damping. But a larger change came in 2018 with the 4th generation model. Although Christina Aguilera probably loved this car more than the last one, she wasn't called on to help promote it because the new biggest fan of the A-Class was Nicki Minaj. It's clear to see why, as the new Pocket Rocket was now available as a saloon as well as a hatchback, and this helped Mercedes expand sales to more parts of the world. Diesels were now out of favour, but were still available along with 1.3 and 2-litre petrol engines. All came with a turbo to extract extra power from the engine, and the tiny 1.3-litre engine could still get to 60 in around 10 seconds. The 1.3-litre was also available as a plug-in hybrid, which upped the 0-60 time to 6.5 seconds. But when you weren't testing this out, you could also get 46 miles on electric power, enough to get you to work and back. With Mercedes dominating in Formula 1, the AMG version got even more power, 416 horses to be exact, delivering a sub 4-second 0-60 time, all from a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. Inside there was a large glass dashboard following the style of many premium German cars, along with voice control. With increasingly global sales, production expanded to China, Mexico, Indonesia, and it made a triumphant return to Thailand. The family car China concept might not have made it, but 25 years later, Chinese customers lined up for Mercedes' new car. The A-Class, like the Mini or the Fiat 500, was a revolution in design and packaging. But unlike both of these cars, it isn't a classic. It didn't have an iconic shape that customers loved, and despite selling respectably, it wasn't a shape that spawned a series of copies. Even Mercedes themselves abandoned their revolutionary design by the third generation car. It was all in their quest to get ahead of their German rivals. Like those doo-wop bands standing on street corners in America in the 40s and 50s, the friendly rivalry between BMW, Audi and Mercedes has redefined the A-Class into a truly successful car. Mercedes' naming system is a law unto itself. Back in 1997, it seemed to make some sort of sense. The A140 used the 1.4 litre engine and the A160 used a 1.6 litre engine. It all started to get confusing by the third generation though, and today the A160, 180 and 200 all have a 1.3 litre engine, and the A220 and 250 have a 2 litre engine.